Yeah. I think Muse is I think we're trying to make music that tries to encompass as much as possible all of the knowledge you've ever had, whether it be spiritual knowledge, emotional experience, life experience, relationships, musical knowledge, musical influences, feelings about the world, feelings about politics, feelings about everything. And I think we try and put all of that into one album, if possible. Yeah, of course. Well, I think as long as you're changing it yourself, as long as I think the music we make is very much a personal expression. And I think that so far the journey has been more of a personal journey as opposed to just a musical journey. Do you know what I mean? As long as our lives are changing and new things are happening, then the music will always be changing as well. For me, it's the kind of thing that when you hear it, it makes you just not afraid of dying at all. I think that music can have that effect sometimes. So not necessarily the music we make, but the music that I listen to from other people. I think you can get that from two different types. You can get it from music like bands like Flaming Lips, who do really uplifting kind of stuff, or even classical music, which has some kind of feeling in it that I can't explain through words, but it's kind of a feeling of something that goes beyond our time. But also just a hard rock sort of animal instinct of survival. That you get from more aggressive music, and I think trying to find a mix between the two is like the overall conclusion of what life is. You know, I mean, I don't know if I'm different to other people or not. I have difficulty working it out. I sometimes think that I'm very similar to other people in the sense that this living in modern society is quite unusual. I think because there's no clear goal and there's no clear reason for anything, and I think that's because of the loss of all religious hope and the kind of materialistic way of life. So I think it's difficult to find meaning in life, and I think that's probably the reason why I spend so much time thinking about if there is any meaning, or what if there is, if there isn't, or there is. And I think that it can be the source of, probably when I was younger, the source of some kind of bad feeling about life or some kind of depression or something. But I think the act of making music is like the solution for me. You know, that is my meaning. That's what gives meaning, because it's like collecting all of the mixed stuff, the stuff that you hate, the stuff that you love, mixing it all together in one song or one album, and the process of doing that is, for some reason, makes it have meaning. I don't know. I think it's getting to the point where I'm thinking about making music that, I mean, when I listen back to a lot of classical composers, a lot of them, they were making music in order to try to directly communicate with God. And I think that's something that people don't really, I mean, I don't really believe in God so much now, but I think it's getting to the point where I'm trying to make music not even for myself and not really for people anymore. I think I'm just trying to make music as some kind of, to bridge the gap between reality and what if there is anything else outside of that. For myself, it's not necessarily my intention to do that for other people, because other people will have their own opinion of what it is. You know, some people think it's shit, or some people think that it has no meaning, or some people think it's very important or whatever. I think for me the act of making music is almost a way of trying to discover if there is God. I don't really maintain any boundaries. I think some songs on the album are they stay within very obvious rock arrangements. I think there's other songs that go beyond the boundary of what is acceptable in everyday thinking. I think there's songs like Apocalypse Please or Butterflies and Hurricanes, Blackout, these kind of songs that delve into the kind of the more extreme elements of fear or panic and exaggerated emotion, whatever, which is a part of me. So therefore it is an expression, but at the same time I suppose it's a part of me that I don't talk about in everyday life, or I don't really express in everyday life. Yeah, I think the boundaries, some songs they automatically have their own boundaries because they deal with very simple things, but I think it's important that if there's a certain song or a certain feeling that feels like it goes outside of your own understanding, I think that again comes across in the music. I think it's a combination of the two, really. I think there's boundaries that we've established on previous albums that we've, like certain a style of music kind of learnt that we do, that we've enhanced again on some songs in this album. So there are some songs that obviously are references to previous albums. I think that they're kind of, you know, paradigms that we've already established. But I think that at the same time there's definitely a few songs that are completely in randomly newer areas. And I think whenever you go into new areas, then obviously you're delving into the unknown, and that's where you can make big mistakes, or you can actually come up with some completely new thing that changes your perception of how to make music. So I think that this album is a balance between the two. I think there's probably 50% stuff that we've established that we know we can do, and we know that we can do well. And I think the other half is kind of stuff that we've never done before, and it probably won't be clear how good it is for another year or something. I try not to think like that. I mean, I think I can always... The songs, the only failure I think is when you record songs too quickly and then you go and play them live for about 6 months or a year and they change so much that they are 10 times better than when you recorded them. But I can't really see that as, I mean, it's a failure, but it's a limit of time, a limit of, the limit of being alive in itself. So, I mean, you can't hold all of your songs and work on them for years before you record them. I think that there's a few songs on sort of previous albums that I feel that if you recorded them sort of 6 months later than we did record them, they would have been much better. I mean, but at the same time, you have to move on. So, if you talk about personal failure, I think that I mean, failure in terms of outside, like critics or people or whatever, that's something that wouldn't really change me. I think there's only so much you can do in one life. You know what I mean? I think you've got to try and do as much as you can. If you are a person that likes creating, anyway, I think that it's you do feel the limits of time maybe because as your understanding is growing, you kind of realise that you don't ever really want to stop that growth, and it's difficult. I don't know. I think I haven't really thought too much about failure. I think I'm a relatively positive thinker when it comes to making music. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but I think at the same time, I think failure is something in retrospect. It's something you look back on maybe years later and think that was very wrong. But the fact that it was in the past means that you can't change it, and it's I suppose all you can do is try to move on. At the same time, I don't think we ever truly do what I really want to do, and that is make music that will probably be more important than my own life. Do you know what I mean? But I think that's something that's very, very difficult to do. I think that only a few it's difficult to say in the last 50 years which bands or which groups or which artists will be remembered in hundreds of years. It's not my intention necessarily to be remembered, but I think the intention is to make music that is still relevant after your own death. Do you know what I mean? So it's I think that's a kind of maybe some kind of insecurity with facing death maybe, or something like that. But therefore making music is a way of not being scared of dying, I think, because it makes you feel there is at least something that you've done that is going to stay with some people, even if it's just one person or whatever, after you've gone. You know what I mean? Yeah, so it's definitely a good reason to live. Yeah, I can't imagine stopping. I mean, there's loads of other areas I'm interested in music. And I think that I've been working very much in kind of the rock world. But I think there's other things I'm interested in that I'm sure that I'll still be doing when I'm old. So I don't really think that we're that complex. I think there's definitely other artists out there that are making music that is much more difficult to understand the intention or the reason. I think there's moments where we're actually trying to simplify certain feelings into a way that you can instantly relate to. I think, but then there is moments of where we are trying to go for music that's a little bit more profound than the obvious. I don't know. I'm not sure where it will go. I mean, to me, like listening to a lot of classical music, for example, that's so profound that I cannot explain it. You know what I mean? Because it's so. I mean, and it has to be because it's lasted hundreds of years, and it has to have some pure truth about the human experience that goes beyond fashion and goes beyond life. And I think that's probably the reason why that music has lasted so long. And I think that, so when I listen to that, I mean, at the same time it's extremely complex and it takes unbelievable mathematical and spiritual understanding to create that kind of music. But at the same time, I think you can just listen to it and drift off into a dream that ever goes. I don't think that music goes beyond people's understanding. I think to try to explain it from a critical point of view becomes very, very difficult, maybe. I'm talking about classical music. I don't think that stops people from getting something from it, I don't know, because I think in modern days, I mean, with recording technology, obviously you can create masses of sound with just electronica. I think that electronica is obviously an area that you can create things, but at the same time, I think that something has been lost that used to be there in getting large groups of people to play together. That if you can get a large group of people to play in harmony together all together for one piece of music, then that is from the person who's watching. I think they get a kind of positive feeling for life that you don't get from pure electronica. I think electronica can take you somewhere interesting, but I think it stays within the realm of our modern time. I don't know. I think I'm interested in both areas really. I think I'm interested in the conflicts between things, like in particular, the conflict between hard rock, aggressive, nihilistic music against spiritual, intelligent music. I mean, I think that kind of conflict between those two, the fact that I like both things, is I'm kind of interested in how they both, if it's possible to mix them together. But in terms of the orchestra and stuff, I think we did do 2 songs, and those 2 songs were very suitable for that, because they had the kind of lyrics and the arrangement and everything worked very, very well. But there's other songs we had on the album that you just couldn't have an orchestra on, because it would just sound stupid. So, so I don't know. I suppose unless we create like loads and loads of songs that have the requirement for large choirs or large orchestras, which again, that's something I really would like to do. But again, it's so expensive. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, because it's quite sad to do that, but not be able to tour with it. You know. I think it's definitely something I'd like to do at some point in the future. But I think I'd probably wait until we get to a point where we know that we can tour like that, you know. So yeah, exactly, yeah. And a lot, yeah. So some solo artists, they have much bigger budgets behind them to make stuff. So because it's accepted that they are not a band, they are a solo artists, so they need the extra artists, you know, to work with. But yeah, it's something I'm interested in. Well, I mean, everyone's stuck within something, you know. I mean, you can never be truly free in anything to do with life. I mean, you can look for it and try and strive for it, but I mean, you know, you can be constrained by your physical abilities, you can be constrained by your personal life, you can be constrained by money, you can be constrained by religious belief or anything. I think that, or you can be constrained by the government, which is the most common thing, I suppose, or constrained by the law, which is another pretty big one. So I don't know. I think that, I mean, I think what we're doing, I suppose, you try and stay close to the limit of what you're doing. I mean, as we're making more money from touring, I think we're putting more money into like things like the stage show and the whole kind of preparation and the equipment and everything. So it's much more high quality than what it was when we started. So I'm trying to sort of make plans for the next tour. And there's like a couple of gigs that we're thinking of doing, a couple of big, like 18,000 type arenas in the UK and France that we're playing, that we're thinking of doing something with a big choir and maybe an orchestra or something. But I'm thinking so much about those gigs, I'm scared I'm going to forget about the other gigs. Do you know what I mean? Because that's something we've never done before, like organising a mass with other people. I think it's a strange experience to try and coordinate or to try and be involved in a big thing. I mean, the experience that I got from playing with the orchestra on the 2 songs on the album is that it was the first time that I did feel the music was more than just me or more than just a band, you know. It felt like a shared thing, and I was looking around and I wasn't really sure who was in control. Like, everyone was kind of just doing their thing, and somewhere the music was being created, and like the producer was kind of just concentrating on the sound a little bit, and I was kind of trying to coordinate certain things, but I couldn't coordinate the orchestra. We had to get an arranger to coordinate them, and it was kind of this strange thing that happened, that somehow a song appeared at the end. I think that's experience I like, because I've had so much kind of creative control for the first 2 albums in terms of within the band. I think this band has definitely, I opened up much more to the other 2 band members. The music was much more of a collaboration in the band, in how the music was made, but also, you know, working with the orchestra, and also the producer Rich Cross, who we worked with, who did Mars Volta and stuff like that. It's a feeling I've never felt before. I think it's a feeling of something like that. I don't know what it is. I think I've realised that in order to go on to do something that is truly great, you do have to collaborate. You know what I mean? I don't think any individual. I think if any individual tries to control too much everything around them, then it will never be something that is great, in my opinion. I think something I'm interested in for the future, but again, depends on certain constraints. Well, the original idea can sometimes change during the execution of it. Like, you can have an original idea that takes you to a certain point, but when you start to try to deliver that, it changes. You change your reality. Maybe that's because of the constraints of reality that you have to perceive it slightly differently or whatever. But I mean, it can be a good thing, you know. But you're saying which is the more important to me? I think that in the past it was probably the creation of it. On the first album, second album, it's kind of the making the songs at home on my own, you know. But I think this album, it was more about the execution, because it got to the point where some of the song ideas, whatever, were never going to truly be to work just within a 3-piece band or within the reality of those instruments. So for that reason, I think that in this album I enjoyed the execution more, because it was a process of change from the original idea. And luckily, I mean, the change was a good one. I mean, the songs came out maybe better or in a different form of what I thought the original idea was. I mean, the original idea, some of the original ideas you have for songs is beyond even music. It's just a kind of a feeling or a complete visualization of colours and ideas, or a feeling of something to do with all of people that I can't really put into words. But I think the process of bringing that into a group of people, a smaller group of people, like three people or an orchestra or something, that is almost like the realizing that that it is possible to live in the real world. I think when I started off, the first few tours that we did, I mean, I was smashing the equipment every day out of sheer frustration, maybe, of not being able to communicate certain ideas the right way. I mean, the reason why in the beginning it was kind of that whole realization of of what you have has to be compromised for it to be communicated, whether it be through the sound production, or whether it be through the fact that the equipment you're using live is not good enough, or whether it be through the fact that you're playing at 10 o'clock in the morning and you're tired. I mean, there's a whole section of reasons in the beginning of the band where I kind of through time you have to learn to accept a certain level of compromise when it comes to communicating your original ideas. That doesn't mean I really enjoy coming up with strange ideas, strange fantasies in music, but I think because it's the third album now, I've learned to accept the process of realization of those ideas. And I think when you learn to accept that compromise or that realization, you actually start to enjoy the execution much more. And I think that's what's happening this time around. I know that the live is going to be slightly reduced of what the album is, and I know that the album is slightly reduced of what the original idea was. But because I accept that, I enjoy those things much more for what they are. You know, I mean, you can have those same feelings in a lot of things. I mean, when you're arguing with your girlfriend or something, you can have that frustration of not being able to really say what it is you're trying to say, or even in conversation with other people. You know, it is difficult to translate internal ideas via any form of communication. But I must say that I think that the making music, the execution of music I can definitely communicate things that I just cannot communicate in words. That when it works, it is an amazing feeling. I think it's only when the execution of a particular concert or a particular recording that has gone badly, or it feels like it's going wrong, that you start to get pissed off or whatever, and you start to think that maybe something's going wrong. But that doesn't happen very often. I think the last couple of years of touring, I think we've found some kind of balance on stage where we kind of start the concert off ignoring the crowd and playing very much for ourselves, and concentrating between as if there's only three of us in the world, and playing music that playing quite introverted really, but we sort of gradually throughout the concert turn into the opposite, and by the end of the concert normally we're extremely extroverted and extremely kind of communicating with the audience, and understanding the relationship between the performance and the audience. And I think that was kind of a way of instead of going out and just really trying to communicate straight away too openly, I find that too confusing. I think that as long as we start off quite concentrating on what we're doing and delivering it in the right way, then by the end you can kind of open up more and more and more throughout the concert. And I think that was it was kind of a habit. It was kind of a habit we got into, that whenever we did it, we seemed to realise that was the best concerts. So we kind of got in. I'm sure we'll be doing that again. So we always kind of do songs at the start of the set that are a bit more dark in content, in lyrical content, and the music is a bit more dark feeling, and we put the kind of more positive stuff and the stuff that's more addressing to people towards the end of the concert. And I think that appreciating yourself objectively is almost impossible. You know, I don't know if it is possible. When I've seen videos of concerts back, it doesn't make me feel what I felt when I was doing it. So I don't know. So I think it's impossible to be objective, really. I don't know how it is possible, because as soon as you watch yourself back, you're just being critical of everything that you've done wrong. So I don't know. I mean, I think that again, it's one of those things you kind of accept, that when you watch yourself back on a video or what, you know, which I don't really do anymore, because I just find it not very enjoyable watching videos back. Or it's in particular videos of like music videos, or in music videos, for example, you have to collaborate with art directors, and you always come at something completely different with the original idea. I mean, like you sit down with a director and you talk about some amazing concept for a video, and then you watch the end and it could never be more far away sometimes than what the original idea was. And that for me is probably the most painful thing to watch back, is music videos, because they always come out so different. Live concerts, I think there's been a couple of live concerts I've watched back and thought that was pretty good, but I usually am always pretty critical of the playing. But at the same time, I think that usually after the few months after I've made an album, that's probably the only time that I do actually enjoy listening to something that I've done. It's usually like the sort of 1 month or 2 months after I've finished an album, which is kind of now really, where I can listen to the album and actually enjoy it as if it's another band. But that doesn't last very long. It sort of lasts for a few months, and then I usually start, I don't really listen to it anymore. And then when we start to play the songs live, I start to want to change the recordings, but blah blah blah. Yeah, and I think that's another reason why I think that we do, because we're touring a lot, we play a lot of gigs. I think that we do reinvent the songs for when we're touring. I mean, we're listening to the album now and enjoying the album, but we know that in literally next week and the week after, we're going to go into a rehearsal room and probably reconstruct all of the songs for the live. I know they'll be very different, you know. and then throughout the tour we'll probably change them again. And so I think, as I said, I think the only time that I can really enjoy listening to something is that 1 month or 2 months after an album, because you usually take a bit of a break. But as soon as you start rehearsing and touring again, you kind of forget about the past, really. So beauty, in terms of if it's possible to find beauty in life, I think that's difficult, but I think that it is possible. But I think that, I mean, influenced by the way certain religions and certain scientific ideas are constructed is very similar. I mean, people, they look at lots of chaotic information, whether it be like say Darwin looks at all of the creatures in the world and sees loads of variations, loads of different types, and cannot explain it. It just seems like a mess. And then he gives a simple explanation, evolutional theory, which explains the reason why there's so many variations. I mean, in reality, that's very similar to religion, which is religion just gives a very simple explanation for the whole creation of the universe, or the creation of the earth, or whatever. I think that, yes, the constant kind of search for a simplicity in what is otherwise messy. Whether it be, political mess, or personal mess in your personal life, or mess in the fact that you listen to so many different types of music and you don't really know what you like. I think the kind of search for a simple explanation that makes all of that make sense is in itself almost a search for beauty, or the search for some kind of, I suppose people like major philosophers or religious philosophers, that they are looking for beautiful explanations for existence, and the same, and all the greatest scientists like Einstein, Darwin, that they're all looking for. I think Einstein's a famous quote from Einstein is that you can recognize truth by its simplicity and its beauty. And I think that's a good quote. That you only know something is very true when it's so simple and beautiful that it just explains itself. And so I think that maybe I think that maybe it's not something I'll do forever. But I think on this album, and maybe music we're making at the moment, I think that looking for some kind of simplicity in understanding whatever. But the thing is to find that. Sometimes you can end up creating very complex music, but it just communicates a simple thing. Yeah, actually, I think FX Twin is like a good example, because some people, even though the efforts that he's put in are very complex and it takes a lot of time, I think that the atmosphere that he's creating is something of simple naivety and almost childlike innocence. And I think that one of the major argument against religious belief is suffering. The fact that why is there suffering in the world, or why do individuals suffer? Because if there was a God, he would not allow suffering. As you're growing older, I think you kind of realise that the suffering is something that has to happen. It's the same as if you're like a rock climber, a person who climbs rocks, and if you take away gravity exists. And if a rock climber falls, he dies. She dies, breaks legs, can be extremely injured, suffering for years. But that doesn't stop them from climbing, and that doesn't stop them from wanting to become a better climber. And I think the same way the suffering exists, in the same way if it didn't exist, we wouldn't try to better ourselves, and we wouldn't try to search for anything. I think that if you remove the bad element out of life, then there is no journey. So. You can sort of hide yourself from all of the things in the world, but at the same time, that's just not it's not an exciting way to live, and it's not you miss out on a massive amount of life experience, I suppose, if you hide yourself securely away from everything and hide yourself behind money or something.